I'm with Paul Madden, the newly appointed High Commissioner from Britain to Australia. Paul, you've been here, I think, 4 weeks. It's been somewhat of a baptism of fire, I would imagine. You've had 2 ministerial visits, and of course later in the year your Prime Minister's going to be visiting Fuchogam.
Mm-hmm. It's been a pretty exciting few weeks, actually. In the space of 4 weeks, I've been to Sydney, I think, 4 times, to Melbourne and to Brisbane. So I've seen quite a lot of Australia already, so it's been fun.
It's a very good start, really, in a way, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
But you've also seen disasters. I mean, there's been probably the most interesting time in Australia in terms of what's occurred, and I don't think I can ever recall in such a short period of time so many difficult things happening. And I know you visited Queensland.
I went up to Brisbane with our Foreign Secretary, William Hague, to Kevin Rudd's constituency, where we met a number of volunteers and flood victims. It was fascinating to hear their stories, and it's very impressive the way the community pulls together here, both the qualities of the emergency services, but how ordinary Australians muck in and help each other out.
Yeah, I think this time around it's probably even more so, but it's good to see, and it's good to see people working together.
Yes.
That was good to see the donations. Now, talking about donations, in terms of the UK has been through a difficult time with the global financial crisis. That's elapsed to a great extent now. How's business in the United Kingdom at this point in time?
Well, I think things are looking quite positive. We had 4 quarters of economic growth, and then we faltered by 0.5% in the final quarter of last year, I think largely connected to the adverse weather conditions. Mm-hmm. But we're on track. We've got some way to go, but we're predicted to grow by about 2% a year for the next 5 years. Our net debt position is pretty good by G7 standards. And in the calendar year 2010, we added 250,000 new jobs in the UK economy. So things are starting to look better, yes.
Yeah. Is this going to be an Olympics-led recovery or an export-led recovery? A bit of both?
I think exports are going to be doing very well, not least because of the competitiveness of the pound at the moment. But certainly the Olympics will be a big focus for us, and a big high-profile event where I think the eyes of the world will be on London.
I understand from what I've been told is that everything's well and truly on plan for the Olympic Games.
Yes, indeed. I was talking to an Australian Olympic expert at dinner last night who was saying he's very impressed, having recently been in London, with just how well things are moving for it.
That's good. Now, there's always been a very strong relationship with Australia, and both in trade and particularly in investment, but things are changing. The world order is changing. China has now emerged as an enormous, both import or trade market for everybody. Mm-hmm. How do you see the role being played for the UK, particularly with regards to business in China?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that we matter enormously to each other still in business relations. I mean, the UK is the second largest investor in Australia with about $500 billion of investment here. We're Australia's 7th largest trading partner with two-way trade of about $22 billion a year, and Australia is the 7th largest investor in the UK.
That's significant, isn't it?
Absolutely.
When you consider the position we are in the world, I think we're about the 12th or 13th world largest economy. So to be the 7th largest investor in the UK is a very strong position.
Yes, yes.
If you're an Australian company looking at the UK, where would you see the opportunities for them? Both from an investment point of view and perhaps even from an export point of view.
Well, I think the first thing for Australian companies is there's a lot of cultural familiarity. So an Australian business arriving in the UK will find it very straightforward as a place to be working. But I think people from most countries in the world will find the UK a relatively easy place to work. I think we're judged by the World Bank to be the easiest place in Europe to do business and the 4th easiest place in the world to do business. One of the advantages of the UK is it's a very networked economy. It's an international hub. It's a great gateway into Europe, which has half a billion consumers. So it's the kind of place that I think Australian companies would want to come as part of their strategy to grow around the world.
Do you think there's things that we can learn from what the UK has just been through in terms of the global financial crisis? I mean, we've been lucky in a sense because we've got a very strong minerals industry. We've got a sort of a gateway to China or a gateway to Asia. Is there things we can learn from what the UK has experienced?
Well, I think companies in both countries can always learn from each other, and one of the best ways that businesses learn is through competition. And the UK, because it's an easy place to work, it's a very competitive market to work in. So I think companies will learn from each other by the tough business of competing in the marketplace.
Are there any particular sectors you think would be important to Australian companies?
Well, the relationship is so strong that really there is investment from Australia right across the board. I think we had 68 new investments from Australian companies last year in the UK across a very wide range of sectors. But if I had to pick out a few sectors, I would say creative industries, ICT, professional services, and increasingly now the whole green economy, environmental technologies and so on.
It's quite interesting here. We of course run the Export Awards in New South Wales, and it's been really noticeable in the last 5 years the role that technology has played.
Absolutely.
It's been, I mean, almost every winner of every award, every export award, has been someone who's had a really professional application of technology. And I would imagine the same thing's occurring in the UK, in fact most of the world.
And that's a huge strength for the UK because of the strength of our research base. And we have the four top universities in Europe are all British. The top 4 universities in Europe are British. 4 of the top 10 universities in the whole world are British.
Just to finish off, you won the cricket, and we've all got to eat humble pie on that. We've got the Rugby World Cup coming up, and I guess in our position, anyone that beats New Zealand will support. But in the final event, if the world has changed, Asia has been our market to a great extent, but now we're seeing that, and a lot of people are, a lot of Europe's looking at it, and the United States is looking at having this export-led recovery, and they're all focusing their attention on Asia. Should we be scared?
Well, first of all, on cricket, it was a great pleasure that my very first day in Australia as High Commissioner was watching England win the Ashes. I have to say, I think I'm probably the first High Commissioner for about 6 or 7 times who's been able to say they've done that, they've seen that on Australian soil. But I've found most of the comments I've heard from Australian friends have been very generous and magnanimous.
We're hoping you'll be the last High Commissioner to witness that as well.
Well, we'll see. It's good to have a friendly rivalry. I've just come down from living in Singapore for the last 4 years, so I've seen a lot of the changes that are taking place across Asia, particularly the growth in China. I know how British and Australian companies and companies from all over the world are keen to get a piece of that growth that's taking place in Asia right now. Yes, of course, we're to some extent competing for that same business, but it's a rapidly expanding pie. And I think competition among us all is what drives business innovation, it drives benefits to consumers, and it will help the Asian economy to grow to the huge benefit of the Asian people. And we've seen literally hundreds of millions of people lifted out of poverty in Asia over the last decade or two.
Well, it's an interesting point you make too, is that we met with Pascal Lamy recently, and of course there's another big change in the world too, particularly in, I guess in trade, but in export in particular, and that is that we are all becoming part of supply chains.
Yes.
And I think that's when we can probably work together with the UK and work together with other partners, not to sort of compete, but sort of complement one another in being part of a supply chain to provide a lot of things to a lot of people.
No, absolutely. It's a network world now. And
it is.
The key thing is to be one of the hubs on that network, and certainly that's the UK's vision, to be a key hub as part of all these global networks and supply chains.
Yeah, and obviously Australia will be an important part of that as well.
Of course.
Paul Madden, thank you very much for joining us. We wish you all the best in Australia, and we hope that your time here is both enjoyable and from a business point of view fruitful.
Thank you very much. Thank you.